So how do you finally achieve perfect recall with your dog? How do you go from a dog that never comes back when you ask them to, or maybe they come back sometimes, but as soon as there's something more interesting, then your recall goes out the window? How do you go from that dog to the dream dog that you can take anywhere, that can be off lead at all times because you know that as soon as you ask them to come back, they're going to? Well, that's exactly what we're going to discuss in this video to help you go from poor recall to perfect recall as quickly as possible. Now, before we dive into the nitty-gritty about how you achieve perfect recall, we have to ask this first question, and it might be a little bit of tough love. You might have to do a little bit of self-reflection and maybe challenge yourself, but if you do, it will be the first step towards success with recall. And that is, does your dog actually know what recall is? Now, I don't mean do you think they know. Do you know that they know what the recall command is? Have you taught it well enough that your dog understands exactly what it is that you mean when you ask them to come back to you? I have had hundreds of clients, if not thousands of clients, working with me here at my canine centre to try and achieve better recall. And they are convinced that their dog knows exactly what it is that they are asking them to do, but they're just choosing to ignore them. And when we test that here at my facility, we realise the dog just simply doesn't know what recall is. They don't know what we mean when we're asking them to come back to us, and that is exactly where we have to start. So at this stage of our flow chart, we have got to go off in one of two directions. Does your dog already know what recall is, and you're certain that you've taught that well enough that if you ask them to come, they know what it is that you're asking from them? If yes, we'll move on to the next stage that we'll talk about later on in the video. If the answer is no, that has to be where we start. That has to be where we put our effort in, is just teaching basic recall. Now, recall can be taught in loads of really fun ways, and we start in lower distraction environments and we build that process up, and over the time we can understand that our dogs definitely know the recall command. Now, we've got loads of different fun ways of teaching recall from the get-go here on this channel, and I've got a completely free training on it. There'll be a link in the description for that if you're interested. So if you're not sure if your dog actually knows recall, that is definitely the place to go. But we want to focus today's video on dogs that do know recall, but it isn't working, and work out that question of why is that the case? Why do some dogs listen and other dogs don't? And for us to be able to understand why some dogs will listen to recall commands and some dogs won't, we have to understand a principle that I like to refer to as competing motivators. The reality is that our dogs are selfish creatures. Now, don't click away, because I love dogs and dogs are amazing, and I know that sounds quite negative, but let me explain what we actually mean by that. Our dogs are driven by what it is that they want, and they will make the decision of what they want to do in that moment. That's what I mean by a dog that is selfish. They are going to make the decision in that moment of what they want to do most, not what you want them to do most. And if your dog understands recall and you ask them to recall to you, you are now presenting them with one option of what they can do in this situation. They can come back to you. And coming back to you should be a rewarding and fun experience. And if it is a fun and rewarding experience, just for the sake of helping you understand, we can put a value on what that is for your dog. And let's start out that the value of coming back to you is worth 50 gold coins. The problem is, in that same moment when our dogs are off lead and they have the ability to make the decisions for themselves, there are lots of other options that they can choose. They can simply just stay in the same place. They could go and run off over there and sniff. They could run towards those other dogs in the distance. They could run towards that squirrel that's about to go and run in front of a road. All of those different things are different options for our dogs, and each one of those different options are also going to have a value associated to them. And although I know it sounded a little bit brutal when I said our dogs are selfish creatures, but if you can accept that and understand that, then you'll understand that all your dog is doing in that moment is choosing the thing with the highest value, and that's what they will pursue. So in that given situation, let's say that we've got you and recall worth 50 coins, we've got another dog in the distance, and we've got a squirrel running that way. For one dog, that might be worth 50 coins, running towards the other dog might be worth 40 coins, and chasing the squirrel might be worth 10 coins. In that situation, you have the highest value, and therefore they will come and recall to you. Another dog in exactly the same situation that has been taught recall in exactly the same way, that has 50 coins for you, might have 10 coins towards running towards other dogs. They're not bothered by that really at all, but it might be 100 coins to go and chase that squirrel. In that situation, our dogs making selfish decisions of the things that interest them most in that moment is going to choose chasing the squirrel over coming back to you, even if they know what it is that we're asking of them. And in that situation, you have lost. And that is what I mean when I talk about competing motivators. When your dog is off a lead, so we don't have any kind of physical restraint or control over our dogs, they are surrounded by competing motivators. We are one of them, but then there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other things that they could choose to do. And in that moment, they will choose the thing that is motivating to them the most. So then how do we go about achieving perfect recall with our dogs? Well, the first thing we need to do is understand our dog's motivations, and every dog will be different. And the beautiful thing is that you know your dog most. You know what things your dog finds highly valuable. What we need to do is, first of all, understand what those things are. That's really useful information. And then we have two choices. We can A, increase the motivation of ourselves. We can go from 50 coins to 60 to 70 to 80 to 90, trying to make ourselves as valuable as possible to the dogs so that when that decision comes, we win as many times as possible. Or we can decrease the value of the other things. Now, the difficult thing is that every single dog is going to have different values associated to different things, and every single dog is going to be easier to either increase the value or decrease the value for different dogs. So for one case, it might be easier for us to simply focus on increasing your value and not worry about the competing motivators whatsoever. But for another dog, we might want to solely focus on decreasing the motivation or the value of those competing motivators. But the outcome must remain the same, as that in that decision, we want our value to be higher than every other option. Now, how we go about increasing values and decreasing values is something that we could literally talk about for weeks and is beyond the scope of this quick video. But like I say, don't worry, I've got completely free training that will be linked below this video showing you how you can do that. And there are simple ways to increase the value all the way through to incredibly high-end complex ways of decreasing the value of other things. Some things we can work on really quickly. Some things might take months and months and months for us to be able to successfully achieve. But if you can accept that fact, if you understand that our dogs are selfish creatures and we understand this game of value that they're constantly playing in every given situation in their life, you'll understand that the game of dog training is to increase the value of yourself and what it is that you're asking the dog to do, and decrease the value of the other options that we don't want them to do. If you can achieve that, you'll be a master dog trainer with a perfectly behaved dog. If you don't know how to do that, more likely than not, you'll find a dog that is choosing to do the bad things all of the time. And every now and again, there's that unicorn dog that even with no training and with poor ownership, the value of doing the right thing is just through the roof from the get-go. And they are the luckiest owners with the luckiest dogs in the world. The reality is that they are incredibly rare. So don't leave it up to chance. Increase your value, decrease the value of the things that you don't want them to do, and you'll be setting you and your dog up for success.